Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. As you know, after several months of declining arrivals over the last week, Denver has again begun to experience a significant influx of migrants arriving in our community from the southern border. For some context, in March and April, we were seeing 20 to 30 arrivals per day. On Tuesday, we saw close to 400. That by far eclipses anything we experienced in December and January by far. And with the upwards of 150,000 migrants reported as being at the border right now, and with Title 42 expiring tonight, we anticipate these numbers are only going to increase. Due to this evolving situation, as you are aware, I have approved the reactivation of the city's Emergency Operations Center, beginning today, to coordinate the management of city agencies and operations involved in supporting this work. I also want to start by thanking Governor Polis and the state for their assistance. They have been instrumental in supporting us as we address the rising number of new arrivals. Let me also thank the Auraria campus community for their support since Sunday, when the numbers really took off. I'm going to cut to the chase and be very clear. We're in desperate need of emergency shelter space to accommodate what will be coming our way, volunteers to help staff them, and funding to cover cost of staffing, food, supplies, and transportation. While sheltering and supporting new arrivals is vital, most of them are trying to get somewhere else in the U.S. Transportation also is a key part of the mission. So we're asking, if you're a church or nonprofit that has available space or staff looking to help out, please reach out to us to let us know as soon as possible. Denver cannot continue to financially shoulder this burden alone. Our reserves are not bottomless, and if this situation extends for a prolonged period of time, some hard choices are going to have to be made. And to be clear, my team and I are already beginning to talk about service cuts. Of the $16 million we've already used to support this emergency response, the federal government has only reimbursed us for $909,000. Denver residents shouldn't lose the services and resources they depend on and pay for with their tax dollars because Congress and the federal government are failing to do their jobs. I and mayors across the country are dealing with their inaction right now. We're calling on the Biden administration to provide funding and logistical support we need to manage this crisis appropriately. And Congress needs to stop playing politics with this issue and pass legislation to fix these challenges. While we're on the subject of politics, I want to face head-on a cynical criticism that somehow Denver brought this on ourselves because we have a policy of welcoming immigrants and we don't use our law enforcement personnel to enforce federal immigration laws. I'm going to be more diplomatic here in front of the cameras than I would be otherwise with such a cynical criticism. This makes for nice sound bites, but it ignores two very fundamental problems. One, the immigration crisis is at a historic level because of conditions in Latin and Central America driving desperate people to our border. Two, continued political dysfunction at home here in the United States prevents changes in federal immigration law, including a broken asylum program and system and under-resourced border security that is humane. Denver's reputation as a welcoming and humane community is not the reason we have a hemispheric migration crisis. This is a politically charged question. It is divisive and would have absolutely no bearing on what we are seeing at the border. and certainly wouldn't have any bearing on people coming to our city seeking to pass through our fine opportunity here in the United States of America. So we're at a breaking point again, and Washington can't keep kicking the can down the road while we're stuck in the cycle of emergencies. It's simply not sustainable. And we're going to provide support, all the support that we can right now, but if it's only us and a handful of local nonprofits doing anything about it, that support is going to become insufficient very quickly. We're sending out the distress signal. We need our federal and congressional leaders to hear it and to respond. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Mueller, the Executive Director of the Office of Emergency Management, to update you on the Emergency Operations Centers, and then we'll come back and do question and answer. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about the reactivation of our Emergency Operations Center as well as our Joint Information Center. So they were reactivated this morning at 8 a.m. in response to the significant influx of the migrants and asylum seekers we've seen over the past 10 days. Activating the EOC and the JIC, what it allows us to do is mobilize more people, mobilize more resources, better coordinate, and better communicate what's going on and do things more expeditiously. The EOC was previously activated, you probably remember, from about December to March to support this effort. We were fortunate that the flow of individuals coming in subsided a bit. We could manage it through city operations. A great thanks to our Human Services Department for their efforts in that regard. But we had been planning and we're anticipating this influx would be coming with the lapsing of Title 42 later today with that, and had been planning to reactivate the EOC if and when that influx arrived, and it is definitely here now. I want to point out that we have had through that entire period since December hundreds of city employees that have been working tirelessly in the sheltering system, the intake center, with our nonprofit partners to work with the folks that have come in over that time. We've also been under an emergency declaration since December and continue to be under one going forward. I want to talk a little bit about coordination. So as the mayor said, a huge thank you to the state of Colorado, the Colorado Office of Emergency Management for their support as what we've had so far, and certainly going forward, we appreciate that coordination with them. And then also our nonprofit partners who have been outstanding and continue to do so much of the work to help those that want to stay here in Colorado. For the reception center, we have recently relocated the reception center to a city facility. We anticipate that this will be a temporary relocation as it's not optimal. However, we are looking for longer-term options as we don't anticipate this is going to subside anytime soon. At the reception center, it serves as a welcoming point for the migrants and asylum seekers as they come in, where they can be triaged. We can determine if they want to stay here in Colorado or whether they want to move on to another location in the country. We are working very hard to minimize any of this disruption to city services that may be felt using city facilities for this purpose. In terms of the community, with the sharp increase in arrivals here, our shelters are at capacity, as the mayor said. We now have more than 1,000 folks in shelters, getting between 300 and 400 folks a day that are coming in, and we do anticipate that to go up. And so the need for the community to step up in a lot of ways and be flexible with us is really paramount. There is in particular a need for some of our faith-based partners to the extent that they can provide overnight sheltering for some of our migrant guests. That is a huge need. In terms of donations, right now, monetary donations are the best way to support. We have the Newcomers Fund that has been activated for several months and is accepting monetary donations. We encourage you to go there. Additionally, we're working with a couple of our community partners to stand up physical donation sites. Likely next week. We don't have those locations. We're not ready to name them yet as we continue to work on the operations, but an announcement will be forthcoming. And then any changes to our current operations, our Joint Information Center will be stood up. They will be putting out daily information that will address that. Want to make sure that you know any updates can be found on our website at denvergov.org/OEM and also on social media. So thanks again to all of our partners. Really appreciate all that they have done and continue to do during this crisis. And now I'll turn it back to the mayor for any questions.
Thank you, Matt. And let me just frame this, and then we'll go to Q&A. 5 months now, City of Denver has received and cared for 10,000, a little less than 10,000 migrants. $16 million, almost $16 million expended by the City of Denver. We are seeing or have cared for 400 to 2,000 people per night to our cities. This is, without question, a humanitarian crisis. And for those who want to ask how we're doing and responding, we're doing the very best we can. We'll continue to try to respond in a very compassionate and humane way to care for those that come into our city. Let me also say, before I ask the question, we don't get advance notice that busloads of people are coming. And so we try to respond as best we can when the souls come to our city seeking opportunity and to help address their challenge as best we can. But we have arrived at a point where our resources are stressed. We have a responsibility as a city to make sure that we care for not only the souls who come here, but also to be fiscally responsible. And that is what I've called my team to do, is to monitor, and we have to make decisions accordingly going forward. So with that, we'll stop and answer any questions that you may have as best we can. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Well, we haven't identified any particular services yet. It's right now a broad conversation of what we might do as a contingency plan. But it has to be a whole process to continue to talk with the state and federal government in terms of what our reimbursements might look like going forward, and then how we might get through the remainder of this year. You got to remember, we haven't really gotten through our major snow season as well, which could stress resources even further. We have inflationary challenges as a city going forward. We've got new programs such as our value-based program that we expected major capital expenditures in 2023 to occur. So we've got commitments and we've got obligations that we must fulfill while we move forward, and so we have to think broad range and beyond even this moment of challenge with the crisis that we're seeing. So we'll make hopefully good decisions and hand off to the next administration and city council at least some strategies that and tools that can help as they try to finish the year.
Just a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that this may mean turning away immigrants?
I'm not going to go that far yet. We're going to continue to try to respond as best we can. I think the best thing that can happen is for the federal government to continue to, work to try to stem the flow of migrants into cities, to handle whatever challenge they may have at the border and create opportunities there, as well as to move expeditiously to create opportunities for the migrants that are coming into our cities, including, suspending some of the work rules that they have in terms of people seeking asylum, as well as to provide resources for us to shelter and to care for them, and move up our reimbursements so that the cities can be made whole, not only Denver, but all the cities across the nation that are stepping up and are receiving, again, without advance notice, migrants coming into our cities. Other questions? Yes. Let's go here and then over here. Yes, ma'am. Hi. We got some very difficult decisions to make. I'm going to ask Margaret Danuser, our Chief Financial Officer, maybe to step up and share some thoughts on that.
Good morning. As the mayor mentioned, we don't have unlimited resources, and so we have already gone to City Council this week to request contingency funds, $11 million to help support what has already occurred for the city. This is an unbudgeted situation for us, and so we are digging into the toolbox and, of course, reaching out to both the federal government and the state for additional resources that might be available. We've applied for federal grants from both FEMA as well as the state of Colorado through their ARPA funds and their Department of Local Affairs funds. So we're stitching together resources to help continue our operations. But as was suggested, there are a lot of levers that we're researching and evaluating for continuing the services at the level we're seeing now. And as the mayor suggested, it may include some hard choices.
Let me just share, you all know that I joined the governor in a letter to Secretary of Homeland Security and Washington, leaders in Washington. I also joined in a letter with numerous mayors from around the country, Los Angeles, New York, D.C., Chicago, Houston, and others, as we spoke and had a conference call on Sunday about the fact that our cities in this country are bearing the burden of inactivity and leadership out of Congress. We are bearing this burden. This is a federal responsibility. The city of Denver, Houston, Los Angeles, D.C., New York, Chicago, Tucson, Phoenix, San Diego, bearing the brunt. Brownsville, Texas, bearing the brunt and the burden of inactivity, politics, and gamemanship out of Congress. And so I want the people of Denver to know that I'm not going to continue or stop chirping and demanding activity. They may not listen to the mayor from Denver because I have a D behind my name. But this is a humanitarian crisis that this city is responding to, that we should not have to be expending the resources of the city taxpayers because it's a federal responsibility. And so forgive my energy behind this, but I want the people to understand that we are bearing that burden because of the lack of leadership and, quite frankly, upholding their oath of office in Washington, particularly out of Congress. Other question? You had a question, sir.
You mentioned that the humanitarian crisis is a consequence of Congress and the federal government failing to do their job. When you say that, do you mean failing to pass an immigration report, or are you talking about providing resources for the state to deal with this humanitarian crisis?
I think it's all of it, sir, to be quite honest. It is the failure to pass a sensible immigration policy for this country, have a plan for asylum seekers who are coming to our border. It is also making sure that cities down in Texas and at the border have resources to manage, and making sure the resources, federal resources, are at the border. I know President Biden is doing everything he can by ushering our military, Secret Service, and other agencies to the border to try to help manage logistics and security. But if we need a plan if we had a plan in place and the necessary resources around Border Patrol and border control, the United States will be in a better position to manage this. And helping cities like Denver, those at the border, as well as Denver, Chicago, and others who may not be on the border, to manage these situations with resources and not only financial, but facilities for shelter as well as operations. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're calling on leadership out of Washington to play the role. Last question from you. Right.
We are expecting, according to the Department of Homeland Security information, there's a lot of people coming to the southern border to spread slowly, they will end up in sanctuary cities like that, right? So beyond the budget, beyond the emergency, the city emergency operations center, so there's a lot of people that probably are here to stay. Do you have any other plan to try to find opportunities for these people not to be homeless in the future?
The reality is that when you speak with the migrants who've come, they want to work. They want to be independent. They're not asking the city to take care of them and their families permanently. We have resources to help people find jobs. We have employers calling us saying we need jobs. Heck, the city of Denver has open positions to put people to work. But the federal policies around work permits, asylum seekers, will not allow us to put them to work for a certain period of time. So this has to be a wholesale approach. It can't just be the city of Denver having resources and a plan to care for people who come to our border. Again, this is a federal responsibility. We're willing to be their partner while they're on the ground with us, with our various operations, job force development, workforce placement, even some of our housing, where we can find those opportunities. But we cannot do it by ourselves, and that's clear. Yes?
Speaking of resources, a lot of the resources that Denver's going to need to accommodate this influx of migrants are the same resources that homeless residents constantly need every day. Do you guys have a backup plan, or what conversations are you guys having about how you guys can still address our homeless crisis here, or is that an aspect of Denver that's going to take a pretty significant hit?
Well, I think the reality is there are going to be a lot of aspects of Denver that are going to take a significant hit if we don't get support from outside agencies, particularly the federal government on this. We will never stop working to serve those who are experiencing homelessness in our city. We have a system. We are investing over $254 million a year this year on the effort, housing, affordability of housing. We will not disrupt those strategies and care for those who are on our streets. Our goal every day is to get them off the streets. Our goal every day is to connect them with the proper services to help them. What we're trying to do here is not exacerbate that challenge. I think the worst thing we could have is migrants who come into our city who also will end up on our streets. And we are doing everything we can to hold that dike from breaking and having an even greater crisis of people on housing in our community. Yes, ma'am.
So the city has said that it's connecting everyone with support services regardless of their status. Most of the people who are coming have A numbers, but that can't be everybody, and the new policy to get federal reimbursement went into effect this week. Is the city turning some people away when it comes to at least overnight shelter because of that?
We're not turning them away. We're advising, we are directing them to other agencies who are in position to help them. Mimi, you want to comment on that?
Mimi Sherman, Chief Operating Officer, Denver Human Services. We are not turning anybody away at this point, and when it's not all of them, it's a very, very small percentage of people that arrive here without an A number. And we have a lot of community support to assist those people. It's a small, small number. So we're actually really pleased that most people are showing up with an A number. However, it's a challenge for sure. But we're not turning anybody away at this point, and especially people arriving who want a bus ticket to move on to their next location. We're offering them shelter the best we can until they can get on their bus. We're having to buy tickets out a couple of days because there's just only so many tickets to be bought.
Yes, ma'am.
So you talked about already the potential of cutting resources, and we also know we're talking to people that some have already received a letter that's directing them to local homeless shelters when capacity is full at sheltering stations. How concerned are you that not adding additional shelter is only going to add strain on other resources in the city?
The letters to direct people to homelessness were really utilized for people who had exited shelter because they had been in stay too long or they'd been exited from shelter for a different reason. This week, we have not been issuing those letters. I think there were some letters issued yesterday inadvertently. They weren't supposed to be issued. We're working very closely with our homeless system to ensure that those people who arrive who were at the reception center are directed back and we will take care of them.
Yes, sir.
What did the city learn, or what do you think your administration has learned from the first rush in the winter about how to deal with it now?
We've learned a lot, and actually during that time, we also spent some time speaking with border cities who are dealing with the issue. We were advised on, very granular level to the larger picture on how to do this. And what you saw us begin to, some of these policies you see us enacting are a result of some of those lessons learned, because this is not what we do. It's not really what they do, but they've learned some lessons because of their certainly more experience and time in doing this. The policies in terms of the city getting out of the ones who actually are providing the shelter, it's not what we do. We don't have the resources to do it, and it's best to get it in the hands of folks who are doing it. I think putting some guardrails in terms of what extent of services we can do, other than facilitating and being a connector and facilitator of services, and making sure we fund or help get the resources to the nonprofit partners. So really leveraging our partners and playing kind of the global role. You saw us transition to that, and that was from some of the lessons learned. We have an RP on the street today to bring in a coordinating third-party partner. Lessons learned, best practices around the country. So what you saw us do is we work to become more educated from very experienced cities that have done this on the border, who help guide us to some policies that work better for them. I saw one hand. We'll take another question here and then here to finish up. Yeah, we are in constant communication with the federal government, and they understand our frustration. I don't want you to think that anything I'm saying here has not been said to the federal government, particularly members of Congress. Our delegation in Colorado is in lockstep with our emotions and feelings about this thing. But, you know, we're one state carrying that message. We need more to do the same. But, yeah, we're in constant communication. I can tell you my Chief of Staff, Alan Salazar, and Deputy Chief of Staff Evan Dreyer, in constant communication with the federal government, with the state government. I'm on the phone with the White House, with members of Congress, with other mayors around the country on a daily basis. So this communication loop is happening. They understand our sense of urgency. I know the governor's on the phone with the Secretary of Homeland Security almost daily. And he's communicating, his team is communicating with us in terms of result of those calls. So anything I'm saying here, best believe it's been said to the principals in Washington. Yes.
Two questions. Are we in a state of emergency? Are you declaring a state of emergency to those people? The second one will be, if we knew that this migrant will come based on what happened in December, why the city wasn't prepared? Why? Because you got by surprise. If you knew that this would come.
We are in a state of emergency. We're in a state of crisis as well. And let me again frame this for you so that you don't lose the power of the moment I'm telling you. First of all, this is not what cities do. I don't know a city in the country, even border cities, that are as prepared as you would expect us to be for this sort of thing. 5 months, 10,000 migrants, $16 million, anywhere from 4,000 to 2,000 migrants per night, new to the city. This is not what we're doing. We're in a humanitarian crisis. I don't know what perfection looks like in a humanitarian crisis. It doesn't exist. You try to respond the best you can, and let me say clearly, we knew that this was going to expire in May. Most conventional wisdom said you were going to see an influx in June. Everyone from Washington to every city in this country says it's early. We didn't expect this early influx of people. 155,000 souls standing at the border right now. This influx that's happening this week is not, we did not expect it. I don't know any city expect. Matter of fact, all the mayors I talked to on Sunday did not expect the surge. I don't know what perfection looks like in a humanitarian crisis, but we're trying to respond in the most compassionate and humane way we possibly can. Last question.
Are there plans to reactivate rec centers as shelters?
Not at this time. Thank you all.